Hey Ionics, what's up? This is Simon from DevTactic, back with a new tutorial that you actually selected. So today's topic is building a shopping cart application with Ionic. And for this, we will use some basic products. We will make some listings. We will have a shopping cart, which we will actually animate using a little library. We want to have a modal overlay to show all of our products and to keep everything in sync with a service. So let's do this. I've already started a blank new app and created a new modal for the shopping cart once we want to see it, and also a service that acts for all the logic in the background. I also installed Animating CSS, a super easy to use library that we will add to add some nice animations that will make our app pretty awesome. So I'll not save this, but here's our application. And to get started, I would say we go to our cart service, which is actually kind of in the wrong place. So normally the service should be created in, come on, Ionic generate services, cart. So I want to have it in that place, and I will get rid of this file. And the cart service is basically the place where we will keep track of all the items added to the cart, of the length of the cart. We will not manage how much the cart is in terms of money. We will do this in the appropriate place, but we could also do this in here. But let's start by creating a little interface, and I will bring in a few snippets every now and then because it's quite a lot of code that you can find actually below this video. So let's start by having some products with an ID, name, and a price and amount. So very simple data. Normally, of course, you would get this from your API. So then let's keep track of a private cart, which is an array of elements. And also now a bit more interesting, the cart item count. Because previously in one other example, we just added the items to the cart, but then it is hard to see how many or what is the amount of pizza salami that the user has selected. So therefore, we will use a behavior subject to which all the other views can basically subscribe, and then we can update the number in this one place and everyone will get the updates. So then to get all the basic data, we implement a few functions to get the products, which will return our data, get the cart, returns the cart, and get the item count, which returns the cart item count. Now we come to the place where we actually need the real functionality. For example, to add a product, perhaps to decrease a product, and also maybe you want to completely remove a product at once. And all of these will get a product passed to them. Perhaps for now, let's keep it like it is and move over to our home page and the homepage TypeScript file. Because it's pretty boring if you don't see anything the first 10 minutes. Therefore, let's try to implement the basic functionality at the same time in our view. So in here we inject the cart service that we just created. Make sure the import is right. And perhaps we might also want to have the modal controller already in place because we will display the cart as a modal later on. So you can also add the implements on init right here, and then write an ng on init in which we will set our initial data. We also want to keep track of the cart item count. So basically the same three variables that our service manages, but now we will just fill them with the data from the service. So this page will only be like the man in the middle getting the data from the service and giving it to the view to display it. That's basically the behavior of a page. So in order to set these three things, we can use the cart service with exactly the functions we just defined. So this view as well needs an add cart, already preparing this for later, perhaps also open cart, and let's keep it like it is. So right now the app should still work in your case, and we can move on to the home page to actually display something. So let's call this Ionic Shopping, most important part, changing the color of the header. And then I will actually bring in a little list snippet. So be aware, there we go. What we do is we create a list of Ionic cards and we iterate over all the products, and the card will have a title with a name. And then inside the card we have an Ion row, and the first 8 columns will be reserved for the price and the final 4 for the add to cart button. This is just to create a nice UI. It doesn't have anything specific to do as well. So we see the cards, we see the price actually using the currency pipe, and then all items are also aligned if you use it like Ion Align Item Center or Ion Text Right. So you can work with these CSS utilities to make the view appear like this. Now we want to make sure that we can add items and that we can also display our card. And to display the card, you can use actually a fab button. So normally this is used in a bit different cases, but you can still use them at the horizontal and at the top perhaps. On click, we want to open a card. The idea is more important later on for the animation. And then we use our card item count. Remember, this is a behavior subject to which we are basically subscribed now, and a little card icon. And by default, this will actually not look really good. So it looks kind of like this. But with a bit of CSS, we can change the height of the fab button. So if you inspect the Ion fab button, you could basically set the height to 70. You see it already gets bigger, and then this also. Then we also want to make the item a bit bigger, and we want to center the label over the icon. So in order to do this, go to your home page as CSS, and here's basically what we just did, transformed in a CSS statement. We want to have the card icon with a bigger font. And for the cut length, which is the label, we use now the primary color and an absolute position. So the result of this is that the icon inside the fab button becomes bigger and the text is inside the icon. So this looks, I think, pretty cool, I would say. Now we of course need to increase the card once we click add. And currently there's nothing going on because add to cart is not calling anything. So let's go ahead by calling our cart service, which takes care of all the important operations. So add product, the product we just clicked, and then let's see what's going on. So we can add something, and of course it is not working because Simon has messed something up. Let's quickly check. I guess maybe the CLI hasn't picked up my new service, so that would kind of make sense to me. Or that we haven't implemented the add product in our service actually. That also makes a lot of sense. So for the add to cart, we want to go through the array of items that are already in the cart. If the item ID is already in the array, we just have to update the amount and otherwise completely add the item. And basically this looks like this. We iterate over the cart. If the product ID is equal to the ID of the item in the cart, we just increase the amount and break the for loop. And if after the for loop we haven't added the item yet, it means the item is not yet in the cart, so we can push the whole object. And finally, we update the item count of our behavior subject +1. That's exactly what we did. As we are here, let's do the same for the decrease. You can imagine it basically works the same. It just looks a bit different simply because I wanted to have access to the index. So with the let p of whatever, you can't access the index, but with the syntax of index and p of this cart entries, and this is like a TypeScript thing, that we can use to iterate the array, we get access to it. Then we just perform the same, reducing the amount. But now the special case is if the amount goes to 0, we want to completely remove the object. So therefore, if it is now 0, we can splice it as a specific index and remove one item from the cart. Looks more complicated than it is. I guess adding and decreasing a product should be pretty easy, but I hope you understand this so far. And again, updating the cart item count value -1. All right, to remove the product, let's just do this to finish our service. We just have to do the same thing that we did for the decrease product. And if it is the same, we again splice the item, but now we have to update the count and subtract not 1, but the amount the item had before. So in our application, this should now hopefully look a bit different. And if we go ahead and add items, we see the item count in our cart increases. I hope your users won't pick more than 100 items, because then the number would look kinda ugly. But for now, we're happy, we can update the cart. We just can't see it yet. So that's when Open Cart comes in. Open Cart should display a modal overlay. And we've already created the cart modal in here. And we can go ahead and let modal equal list.modal controller create. And now we have to pass in the component, which is the cart modal page. Make sure you got the right path. And we also want to specify a CSS class that we call cart modal, because I don't want to cover the whole screen with the modal. I just want to make this a bit smaller. Now, as you know, we have to await the result or use then, but await looks actually a bit cooler and makes the code easier to read now, or shorter actually. So then we can directly call present on the modal if we await the result of this. I think for now that's fine. So let's save this. Open Cart is called once we click the button. So let's see what's happening. No component factory found. The reason is that right now the cart modal is not connected really to our app. It would be connected with a routing, but we're not using it like this. We're using it in a modal. And therefore, what we have to do is go to our app module and to the imports, simply add the cart modal page module. If we add this to the imports, the page is known in our application and we can directly open it from here. As you can see also now, if you check out the most top element of the modal, I think it's this, we see that the CSS class cart modal is added. And what you also note is that this modal is actually above the current page. So we can't use the CSS class simply inside the homepage as CSS, but we have to define it in our global as CSS. And we can do this right here. And actually we can also do a second thing in here, which is to import the Animate CSS file. So let's do this right here. In terms of the cart modal, let's say we want to just have the height of half the screen, we want to have some round borders, and we want to have some padding at the side. Let's check out how our cart modal behaves to this change. And there we go. And now the cart modal is in the middle of the screen with just a few lines of CSS. So that was pretty easy, I would say. So now we can move on to the cart modal page. And I know this is a lot and fast, and if you still need some time, just pause the video, check out the link below the video to the full code, and of course give the video a like and subscribe. But then once you're ready and fine so far, continue with the modal page. Because on the modal page, we don't really need that much. The only thing we need in here are a lot of functionalities. So first of all, this page also needs access to our cart and an empty array. And guess what? In the ng on init, we will then initialize the cart. So let's give it the cart service card service, there we go. And then let me bring in a few functionalities and also add the private modal controller modal. No, that's not how you spell it. Yeah, there we go. So we initialize the card by getting the card just like we did in the home page. And we implement also the further functionality to decrease or increase a card item directly from the card page, because that's what you see in many apps. Also remove, so these are now the 3 functionalities to change all of this. Get total is interesting because this will now return the whole amount of money for the order. And we can use the reduce on the card, which will basically go like through each of the items. And now, of course, the items have a price and an amount, like this, for example. And then for each of these items, we will take the initial value, which we also set to 0, plus the price times the amount. And that's the easy calculation, and reduce it, which will then give us back one number in the end. And of course, we need a close for the modal if we don't touch the background, which would work, but let's also add a little close button here. In terms of checkout, we could implement something, but we will leave this out. There are actually great tutorials already out there on the topic of, for example, using the PayPal checkout, the Stripe checkout, or any other package. If you're also interested in this, please just leave a comment below the video, but this was just too much for one video. Perhaps we could then do another video on the topic of payments, but let me know what you're really interested in, like Alipay, PayPal, Stripe, anything else. So I'm not completely sure what might be the best idea here. Okay. We got the functionality for the card in place, so let's move over to the card modal page. And because I guess we're already recording for, yeah, basically 20 minutes, let's do this a bit faster. So we wanna just have the Ion content and call this one full screen to make it look better on our screen, because we don't have a header bar, don't need to take care of the header area. So then we got a little button to close the view, and now actually a very long snippet, but it's better to paste it and then go through it because this will give us more time to talk about it. So we surround it with little padding. We should use the class now and not just padding directly on the element. This is deprecated. So the list then again goes through all of the card items, and in each of the card items we use the Ion Grid, because if we don't use Ion Grid in just a row, the design or the UI is completely messed up. And the first row, which goes actually nice highlighting, I like that. So you see the first row, we got a column of 2 with a decrease, we got the amount, and we got the increase. Everything else you see in between here, all the typing is just like additional styling stuff. Really, you could have it in an ugly looking version by just using the button and the click events. So this is really the important part here. And of course, showing the amount for an item. In the second row, we then have a column with a name, and at the end, the amount times price as a currency. Also, as another item after the first item, so let's close this, perhaps then it looks a bit better. The first item is the iteration of the product, and then we got like one manual item, which is our total row, followed by a little checkout button. So let's see if we add a few items and then go here, we see 2 times the salami with a price, pizza classic, and now we can move from here, change the prices, everything is reflected also in the total value, and we could also completely get rid of one entry, and if we hit 0, we're also there. What you also haven't noticed perhaps is look at the area of the card here. So if we increase or decrease the value here in the background also changed because we are subscribed to the behavior subject. So it is really a smart idea to have this in your service and easily subscribe from all the places in your view where you need access to the number of items in your cart. So that's basically the cart logic we wanted to implement. Now, what we maybe want to do as well is actually adding some animation stuff, because currently nothing is animated. And to use the animation, we will close a few pages and go back to the home page, because now we need access to the fab button, because that's the one we want to animate, and we can access it by the ID cart. So let's add a view child cart, and this will be our fab element ref. This is not going to work. We need to add a bit more. So we need to add static false since Angular 8. And we also want to read the element ref, which is required because Ionic uses web components, and we want to get the underlying element. So with that view child, we can now use, for example, in our add to cart a function that might call another function. Yes. To make this more simple, I actually copied this over from, I want to open this, from Animate CSS. What you want to do with Animate CSS is simply using one of these animations and then adding the class animated and the name of the animation to the class list of an element. So this is not really Angular code, therefore I changed it a bit. The problem is that if you use it like this, you also need to remove it in the end if you want to trigger the animation again, because otherwise the classes would remain on the object. But therefore they got this little snippet in here which has an animation end handler that basically removes the class once again. And I just transferred this to Angular, so we get the native element of our fab button. We add to the class list animated and whatever animation we want to use. And I also added to keep animated. This is just to keep the class in place because we want to fly out a button, and if we would remove the class, the button would immediately appear again. So this is just a little addition from my side. And then at the end, you remove the event listener so nothing else happens. And now we can use Animate CSS in the right places. So in our add to cart, we want to call Animate CSS, and let's call tada in here. And let's see how this now changes the UI in our application. It means if we click on plus, the tada animation is added to the cart, and immediately it makes this nice little animation. You can actually check out the Ion Fab button. So if I hit plus, you see for a short time there's the animated tada class added and then removed in the end again. Now also when we open the cart, perhaps let's call another functionality. In this case also we want to call bounce out left. And now the problem appears that I wanted to describe like a minute earlier. The cart rolls out, but it immediately appears again because we're removing the class in the end. And if I now pass true to keep this animated, the class will simply bounce out left and then stay out of bounds. And once we close the button, it would be cool to fly it back in. So let's add to the modal on will this miss or did this miss, doesn't really matter. So once the modal will be dismissed, we will call Animate CSS bounce in left. And this should basically roll back in our animation. Close it, and it's not coming back. The problem here is that because we kept it animated, the animated class is of course still on the fab button. So maybe I can show you this once again. This was really tricky to implement. So there's the Ion Fab button, and right now it has animated bounce out left, and it stays like this. And if we now go back, bounce in left is added, but animated and bounce out left were still there, so it's not animated again. And to change this, we can now manually remove the animated and bounce out left again in here, which means when a modal is dismissed, we remove the class and then add the other animated class, and the result is it comes back in. So now we can play around with our card, we can add something, we can change everything in here. We see the amount updating, we can close it and it flies back in. So that was my work for what you as a community decided. I will do this more often in the next time. I'll let you decide about upcoming content. Actually, one other item of that decision, which was about images, also received a lot of votes, so I guess this will be the next topic then. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like below. Also share it with your friends and subscribe to the channel. And of course, check out our Thursday vlog edition. And if you want to learn more Ionic, of course, check out the ionicacademy.com, my place to help you with everything Ionic. Thanks to all the Simonics. I will meet you in the next video, so have a great day and take care.